"A toast," my daughter-in-law Rachel Brooks announced, raising her crystal wine glass with that practiced smile I'd grown to recognize as completely fake. The chandelier light caught the expensive diamond bracelet I had given her for Christmas last year. To my mother-in-law Diane, who always has her checkbook ready but will never understand what it means to be part of this family. The dining room fell silent. My carefully arranged anniversary dinner, 15 years of supporting them financially, suddenly felt like a public execution. My son Ryan stared at his plate, refusing to meet my eyes as everyone shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Rachel took a long, deliberate sip of the wine I had paid for, watching me over the rim of her glass as if waiting for me to break. 15 years. 15 years of paying their mortgage, their car payments, their children's private school tuition. 15 years of emergency loans that were never repaid, of business ventures that never materialized, of family vacations funded entirely by my retirement savings. And now here she was, mocking me in front of our closest friends and family as if I were nothing but an ATM with a heartbeat. I didn't say a word. Instead, I reached into my handbag and removed a small golden key attached to a document that I had prepared that morning with my attorney. The metal made a distinct sound as I placed it in the center of the table, a sound that felt like freedom. Ryan recognized the key immediately. His face drained of color as he reached for the attached document with trembling fingers. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking as his eyes scanned the eviction notice. "Please tell me you didn't do this." Rachel's smirk vanished as she reached for the paper. "What is it? What's going on?" "It's the key to your house," I said calmly, standing up. "The house that's in my name. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful friends and family. Thank you so much for joining me for another true life story. Your support means the world to me, and I'm incredibly grateful for each and every one of you who takes time out of your busy day to watch these videos. Before we dive into today's story, I want to say a special prayer for all of you wonderful souls. May your path be blessed with light during dark times. May you find strength when challenges appear, wisdom when facing difficult choices, and peace in knowing you're never alone on your journey. Now, let's get into today's story about a mother-in-law who finally stood up for herself after years of financial abuse and disrespect. I wasn't always the woman who could shut down a dinner party with a single golden key. Once, I was simply Diane Jenkins, a 49-year-old widow trying to rebuild her life after losing her husband Michael to a sudden heart attack. That was 20 years ago, though sometimes the pain still feels fresh. Michael and I had built a successful real estate development company from nothing. We started with a single fixer-upper that we renovated ourselves, then gradually expanded to larger properties and commercial developments. When he died, I was left with a thriving business and a substantial inheritance, but a hole in my heart that nothing could fill. "You should sell the company," friends advised. "It's too much for you to handle alone." But the business was Michael's legacy, our legacy, and I refused to let it go. Instead, I threw myself into work, expanding our portfolio and doubling our profits within 5 years. Business became my salvation, my distraction, my purpose. Ryan was 24 when he brought Rachel home to meet me. I still remember that day vividly. The spring sunshine streamed through my kitchen windows as I prepared lunch, hoping to make a good impression on the young woman who had captured my son's heart. "Mom," Ryan called out as they entered. "We're here." I wiped my hands on my apron and turned to see my son, Michael's spitting image with those same warm brown eyes, standing beside a beautiful young woman with flowing auburn hair and a dazzling smile. "Mrs. Jenkins," Rachel said, stepping forward to embrace me. "I've heard so much about you. Ryan says you're the strongest woman he knows." Her hug felt genuine, her words touching. For the first time since Michael's death, I felt a flicker of hope for a different kind of happiness, the joy of an expanded family. "Please," I said, squeezing her hands. "Call me Diane." She looked around my home with wide, appreciative eyes. "Your house is beautiful. Ryan told me you built your company from scratch." "That's so impressive." Over lunch, she asked thoughtful questions about Michael, about our business, about my life. She seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family. When Ryan announced their engagement 3 months later, I was thrilled. "She's perfect for you," I told my son, embracing him. "Your father would have loved her." The wedding was a lavish affair. I insisted on paying for everything. "This is your special day," I told them, writing checks without hesitation. "Let me handle it." Looking back, I should have noticed the pattern beginning even then. The modest ceremony they initially discussed somehow transformed into a destination wedding at a luxury resort. The guest list doubled, then tripled. The simple reception became an extravagant 3-day celebration with imported champagne and celebrity entertainment. But I was so happy to see my son starting a new chapter, so eager to embrace Rachel as the daughter I never had, that the mounting expenses seemed inconsequential. 2 months after the honeymoon, Ryan called me with an unexpected request. "Mom, I hate to ask this," he began, his voice hesitant. "But Rachel and I found the perfect starter home, and we're a little short on the down payment. How much do you need?" I asked without hesitation. "50,000, he replied. "We'll pay you back as soon as we're settled, I promise." I transferred the money that same day. The starter home turned out to be a 4-bedroom colonial in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. When I visited for the first time, Rachel gave me a tour that ended in a beautifully decorated guest room. "This is your room, Diane," she said, linking her arm through mine. "So you can stay with us whenever you want. We're family now." Her words warmed my heart. After years of loneliness, I finally had the family connection I'd been missing. What I didn't realize then was that this was just the first step in a carefully choreographed dance that would eventually drain my accounts and test the very meaning of family. Have you ever noticed how manipulation often begins with kindness? How those who plan to use you must first make you feel special, needed, valued? Looking back now, I see the red flags that were hidden behind those warm smiles and affectionate embraces. But when you're lonely, when you're desperate for connection, it's so easy to mistake exploitation for love. The financial dependency crept in so gradually I barely noticed it happening. What began as occasional help with unexpected expenses evolved into a constant stream of requests that seemed reasonable in isolation, but created a devastating pattern over time. 6 months after the down payment, Ryan called again. His voice sounded strained, worried. "Mom, I hate to bother you with this, but we've hit a rough patch. Rachel's car broke down, and the repairs are astronomical. We're thinking it might be better to just get a new one." "How much are the repairs?" I asked. "Almost 8,000, he sighed. "For that much, we could put a decent down payment on something more reliable." "What kind of car were you thinking about?" A brief pause. "Well, the Mercedes SUV would be safest for when we start having kids. But we could look at something more affordable." 2 days later, I was co-signing on a luxury SUV that cost more than my first house. The salesman smiled as he handed Rachel the keys. "Your mother-in-law is incredibly generous," he remarked. Rachel slipped her arm through mine. "Diane is family. That's what family does. They take care of each other." Those words became a refrain over the years, a mantra repeated to justify every request. Family takes care of each other. When my first grandchild, Emma, was born, Rachel called from the hospital. "Diane, we've been talking about the nursery," she said while I could hear my newborn granddaughter's cries in the background. "The crib we wanted is back-ordered for months. Emma deserves the very best start in life, don't you think?" How could I argue with giving my grandchild the best start? The nursery renovation cost $30,000, a far cry from the simple crib they'd initially mentioned. When my grandson Jacob arrived 2 years later, the pattern continued. Private preschool tuition because the public schools in our area aren't challenging enough. Extravagant birthday parties because these memories will last a lifetime. Family vacations to exotic locations because building experiences together is so important. 7 years into their marriage, Ryan lost his job at the investment firm where he'd worked since college. "It's just temporary, Mom," he assured me over dinner at my house. "I've got some promising leads." Of course, I said, cutting my chicken. Take your time finding the right fit. I can help until you're settled. Rachel reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You're such a blessing, Diane. I don't know what we'd do without you. What should have been a few months of support stretched into years. Ryan's promising leads never materialized into steady employment. Instead, he began talking about entrepreneurial ventures and startup ideas. I need seed money, he explained, spreading business plans across my dining room table. This is guaranteed to take off. When it does, I'll pay you back everything with interest. Each business failed before it truly began. A gourmet food delivery service. A tech startup developing a fitness app. A specialty clothing line. Each venture required substantial investment. Each ended with apologetic explanations and promises that the next idea would be the successful one. By the 10-year mark, I had invested over $250,000 in my son's failed businesses, paid nearly $200,000 in mortgage payments and property taxes on their home, covered countless car payments, insurance premiums, and credit card bills, and financed every aspect of my grandchildren's education and activities. Mom, Emma got accepted to the elite gymnastics program. Ryan announced one evening. It's a tremendous opportunity, Olympic-level coaching. That's wonderful, I replied, genuinely happy for my granddaughter who had shown remarkable talent. The only issue is the cost, Rachel interjected. It's $15,000 for the year, plus travel expenses for competitions. I hesitated for the first time. That's quite an investment. Rachel's face changed subtly, her smile tightening. I thought you'd be excited for Emma. She's been talking about nothing else for weeks. She's already told all her friends. Of course I'm excited for her, I backpedaled quickly. Grandma. Emma burst into the room, her 10-year-old face alight with joy. Mom said you might help with my gymnastics. I promise I'll work super hard. Coach says I could even qualify for regionals this year. How could I say no to that face? To those dreams? The money I had been saving for a Mediterranean cruise, a promise I'd made to myself on my 65th birthday, was diverted to competition leotards and hotel rooms in distant cities. By year 12, I had begun to notice troubling signs in my financial reviews. The retirement fund that should have lasted well into my 90s was significantly depleted. The business profits that once seemed inexhaustible were being stretched thin by constant withdrawals. My financial advisor, James, finally confronted me during our annual meeting. Diane, I need to be direct with you, he said, sliding a report across his desk. At the current rate of withdrawal, you'll deplete your savings within 5 years. The business is still profitable, but not enough to sustain these expenses indefinitely. I'm helping my family, I explained weakly. James leaned forward, his expression concerned. There's a difference between helping and enabling, Diane. And there's a difference between generosity and exploitation. His words stung because deep down, I knew he was right. But every time I considered scaling back my support, something would happen. Jacob would need braces. Emma would qualify for a national competition. The house would need a new roof or furnace. And always, there would be those subtle emotional manipulations. The kids were really hoping to see you this weekend, Rachel would say casually. But I understand if you're too busy with work to spend time with them. The implication was clear. My access to my grandchildren was contingent upon my continued financial support. By year 15, I had canceled my plans to renovate my aging kitchen, postponed necessary medical procedures, and completely abandoned any thought of traveling during my retirement years. Meanwhile, Rachel and Ryan had remodeled their kitchen twice, vacationed in Bali and the Maldives, and driven a succession of luxury vehicles. The turning point came unexpectedly during what should have been a joyful occasion, my 70th birthday dinner. Ryan and Rachel had insisted on hosting at their home. Let us do this for you, Mom, Ryan had said. After everything you've done for us, it's the least we can do. What they did was order catering from my favorite restaurant and charge it to my credit card, a card I had given Rachel for emergencies years earlier. When I saw the charge notification on my phone during the dinner, something inside me finally broke. 15 years of accumulated resentment bubbled to the surface, though I maintained my composure throughout the evening. It was only later that night, alone in my bedroom, that I allowed myself to face the truth. I had been systematically exploited by the people I loved most, and it was time for it to stop. If you've ever sacrificed your dreams for someone who didn't appreciate it, I want you to share your experience in the comments below. How did you finally recognize what was happening? And most importantly, what did you do about it? The night that changed everything was meant to be a celebration, the 15th anniversary of when Ryan and Rachel first moved into their home. Rachel had insisted on hosting a formal dinner party with our closest friends and family. "Let's make it special," she'd said during our weekly phone call. 15 years is a significant milestone. Indeed, it was 15 years of me paying their mortgage. I arrived early that evening to help with preparations, only to discover that helping meant watching professional caterers arrange elaborate displays of food I was undoubtedly financing. "Diane, you look tired," Rachel commented as I hung my coat in the foyer. She wore an elegant black dress I recognized from the shopping trip we'd taken last month, another expense on my credit card. "Is everything all right with the business?" "Just busy," I replied. "The Westfield development is taking more time than expected." "Well, don't work yourself to death," she said, patting my arm. "Ryan worries about you pushing yourself too hard at your age." At my age. The subtle digs had become so common I barely registered them anymore. The guests arrived gradually, Ryan's childhood friends, Rachel's colleagues, a few neighbors, and my sister Patricia with her husband. The house looked immaculate, with fresh flowers in every room and new furniture in the living room that I didn't recall seeing before. "Do you like the new sectional?" Rachel asked, noticing my gaze. "We decided it was time for an upgrade. The fabric is imported from Italy." "It's lovely," I said, mentally calculating the cost. "Was it planned in your budget this month?" A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. "Ryan handled it. You know how he is about making our home perfect." Throughout dinner, Rachel played the role of gracious hostess perfectly, refilling wine glasses and encouraging conversation. But I noticed how she subtly dominated every discussion, especially when I tried to share stories about Ryan's childhood or my business accomplishments. Before Diane gets too deep into business talk, she interrupted as I was explaining our new project to a fascinated neighbor. "Let me tell everyone about Emma's national gymnastics competition next month. We'll be traveling to Denver for a week." "Denver?" I asked, surprised. I hadn't heard about this trip. "Oh, I thought Ryan mentioned it," Rachel said dismissively. "We'll need to finalize the flight arrangements soon. The competition hotel is quite expensive, but Emma deserves the best accommodations." Ryan, who had been unusually quiet all evening, avoided my gaze. The message was clear. Another major expense was being planned, and my checkbook was expected to open without question. As dessert was served, Rachel clinked her glass with a silver spoon. The room quieted, and all eyes turned to her. "I'd like to propose a toast," she announced, rising gracefully to her feet. "To 15 wonderful years in this beautiful home." Everyone raised their glasses, smiling. "And of course," she continued, turning to face me directly, "to my mother-in-law, Diane, without whom none of this would be possible." A murmur of appreciation rippled through the guests. For a moment, I thought she was actually going to express genuine gratitude. "To the woman who never says no," Rachel continued, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "The woman who's always ready with her checkbook, but never with unsolicited advice. The perfect mother-in-law who pays the bills, but knows when to keep her opinions to herself." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My sister Patricia stiffened beside me. "To Diane," Rachel concluded, raising her glass higher, "who has been more like a bank than a mother to us all these years." She sipped her wine as if she'd just delivered a heartfelt compliment rather than a public humiliation. Ryan stared at his plate, his cheeks flushed with what I hoped was shame. The other guests shifted uncomfortably, uncertain how to respond. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a perfect clarity I hadn't felt in years. All the doubt, all the guilt, All the fear of losing my connection to my grandchildren, it all evaporated under the heat of Rachel's casual cruelty. Without a word, I reached into my handbag and removed 2 items I had been carrying for weeks, a golden key and an envelope. I placed them deliberately in the center of the table. "What's this?" Rachel asked, her smirk faltering slightly. "The key to your house," I replied, my voice steady and calm. "And notice of transfer of ownership." Ryan's head snapped up. "Mom? For 15 years, I've made the payments on this house while you've lived in it," I explained, looking directly at my son. "I had 2 choices. I could sign it over to you as a gift, or I could sell it and reclaim my investment." Rachel's face had lost its composure entirely. "You wouldn't." "I've decided on the second option," I continued as if she hadn't spoken. "The house goes on the market next week. You have 30 days to find new accommodations." "You can't do that," Ryan stammered, finally finding his voice. "This is our home. The kid's home." "Actually, I can," I replied, standing up. "The mortgage is in my name. The deed is in my name. I've paid every payment for 15 years while you and Rachel lived well beyond your means. That ends today." I turned to address our stunned guests. "I apologize for the dramatics. It seems this celebration was premature. Stopwatch equals 2. As I walked toward the door, Rachel recovered enough to follow me. "Diane, you're overreacting," she hissed, grabbing my arm. "It was just a toast, a silly joke." I looked down at her hand until she released me. "No, Rachel. It was the truth. I've been your bank, not your family. And as of tonight, this bank is closed." My sister Patricia hurried to join me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and admiration. "I'll drive you home," she whispered. As we left, I heard the commotion erupting behind us, Rachel's angry exclamations, Ryan's panicked protests, guests making hasty excuses to leave. For the first time in 15 years, their problems weren't mine to solve. Have you ever reached that breaking point with someone who took advantage of your kindness? That moment when you finally see with perfect clarity that what you thought was love was actually exploitation? If so, you know exactly how I felt walking out that door, terrified and heartbroken, but finally free. The night after the dinner party, I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's smirk, heard her mocking words, felt the weight of 15 years of manipulation. By dawn, I'd made peace with my decision. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity and my future. My first call at 8 a.m. sharp was to Howard Mitchell, my attorney of 20 years. "Diane," he answered warmly. "This is an early call. Everything all right?" "I need to see you today, Howard. It's urgent." 2 hours later, I sat in his office explaining the situation. "So you've been paying the mortgage on their house for 15 years? Howard clarified, taking notes. "And the deed and loan are both in your name?" "Yes." "Ryan and Rachel have never made a single payment." Howard removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. "Legally, you're on solid ground. The house is yours to sell. But Diane, are you prepared for the family fallout? This won't just affect Ryan and Rachel. I thought of Emma and Jacob, my beloved grandchildren who had never known anything but privilege and excess. They need to learn that actions have consequences. All of them." "Very well," Howard nodded, replacing his glasses. "I'll prepare the necessary paperwork and contact a realtor. Now, what else needs addressing?" By noon, we had created a comprehensive plan to disentangle my finances from Ryan and Rachel's life. The list was staggering. 1. Revoke all authorized credit cards. Rachel had 3 connected to my accounts. 2. Cancel automatic transfers to their bank accounts, a monthly emergency fund of $3,000. 3. Remove my name as guarantor on their vehicle loans. 4. Notify their children's schools that I would no longer be responsible for tuition payments. 5. Cancel the utilities I had been paying for their home. 6. Freeze the educational trust accounts pending restructuring. 7. Change the beneficiaries on my insurance policies. 8. Update my will and estate planning documents. "It's quite a list," Howard observed. They've become remarkably dependent on you. Dependency was their goal all along, I replied. I just didn't see it until now. As I left Howard's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Mom, we need to talk. Rachel is upset. Can you come over? I replied simply, I'm busy today. My attorney will be in touch. The next stop was my bank, where I met with the manager to secure my accounts and ensure Ryan and Rachel couldn't access any funds. The manager's eyes widened as we reviewed the withdrawal history. Mrs. Jenkins, did you authorize these transactions? He asked, pointing to several large transfers from my investment account to Ryan's personal account. Which transactions? He turned the monitor so I could see better. There have been monthly transfers of $5,000 for the past 3 years, in addition to the $3,000 automatic transfer you set up. My stomach dropped. I only authorized the $3,000. The manager's expression turned grave. These additional transfers were initiated online using your credentials. Each one was confirmed via email. A memory flashed Rachel, helping me set up my online banking 3 years ago. I need to secure my account immediately and investigate these unauthorized transfers. By late afternoon, I had discovered over $180,000 in unauthorized transfers, money systematically siphoned from my accounts through digital access I hadn't even known was compromised. The bank flagged it as potential elder financial abuse and opened an investigation. When I finally returned home, exhausted but resolute, I found Ryan sitting on my porch steps. His normally confident posture was slumped, his face haggard. Mom, he began, standing as I approached. What's going on? The school called Rachel saying tuition hadn't been paid, and the bank called about the car loans. I unlocked my door and walked inside, leaving it open for him to follow. In my kitchen, I turned to face my son, this man I had raised, loved, and ultimately failed by making life too easy. Did you know about the extra transfers from my investment account? I asked without preamble. His hesitation told me everything. Rachel handles most of our finances, he said eventually. That's not what I asked. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it made my heart ache. Things have been tight, Mom, with the kids' activities and the house maintenance. So you knew. The final thread of hope I'd been clinging to, that perhaps Ryan had been manipulated as well, snapped clean. You've been stealing from me. It wasn't stealing, he protested. You've always said what's yours is ours. We're family. Family doesn't mock you at dinner parties, I replied coldly. Family doesn't drain your retirement fund while you cancel your own dreams. Family doesn't steal from you. Rachel went too far with that toast, Ryan admitted, his voice softening. She was just trying to be funny. You know how she gets when she drinks. This isn't about the toast, Ryan. It's about 15 years of manipulation and exploitation. It's about raising children who believe they're entitled to everything without working for anything. So you're just cutting us off? Throwing us out of our home? What about Emma and Jacob? Where are we supposed to go? The same place other adults go when they need housing. Find a place you can actually afford. His expression darkened. If you do this, you'll never see the kids again. Is that what you want? There it was, the ultimate manipulation tactic, the one I had feared for years. Using your children as emotional hostages is despicable, I said, my voice trembling with anger. If you keep me from seeing them, they'll eventually learn what kind of people their parents really are. You have no idea what you're doing, Ryan snapped, his entitlement fully exposed now. Dad would be ashamed of you. The mention of Michael was a low blow, designed to wound me where I was most vulnerable. But instead of pain, I felt a strange certainty. Your father worked for everything he had, I replied calmly. He would be ashamed of what you've become, a man who lives off his mother's hard work while teaching his children that exploitation is acceptable as long as you call it family. Ryan's phone rang, Rachel's ringtone. He answered sharply. I'm still talking to her. No, she's not budging. I don't know, Rachel. I could hear Rachel's shrill voice through the speaker, though not her exact words. The panic was evident in her tone. She says the power company called, Ryan reported, covering the phone. They're shutting off our utilities tomorrow because the accounts are closed. That's correct, I confirmed. You'll need to open accounts in your own names. Ryan stared at me as if I'd suggested they live in caves. With what money, Mom? You know we don't have that kind of cash available. Then I suggest you find jobs. Both of you. After Ryan left, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the windows, I sat alone in my kitchen feeling both horrible and liberated. The phone calls began almost immediately, first Rachel, then Emma, clearly coached by her mother, then several mutual friends questioning my sanity and cruelty. I let them all go to voicemail. That night, I wrote a letter to Emma and Jacob explaining in age-appropriate terms that Grandma would always love them, but that grown-ups sometimes needed to learn important lessons about responsibility. I promised that I would always be there for them, even if things would be different now. If you believe in setting boundaries with toxic people, even when they're family, especially when they're family, please subscribe to my channel. Because sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop enabling their worst behaviors. The fallout was swift and painful. For 2 weeks, my phone alternated between angry voicemails from Rachel and tearful pleas from Ryan. I held firm, though each message tested my resolve. Then came a call I hadn't expected. The school principal, Dr. Morgan, requested a meeting regarding Emma and Jacob. Mrs. Jenkins, she began when I arrived at her office. I understand there's a family situation affecting the children's enrollment. Their parents can no longer afford the tuition, I explained simply. Dr. Morgan folded her hands. I'm concerned about pulling them out mid-semester. Emma is preparing for her advanced placement exams, and Jacob has just begun specialized reading support. My heart ached thinking about the disruption to their education. I understand your concern, but their parents have options. They could get jobs, apply for financial aid, or transfer to public school. The children are quite distressed, she continued. Especially Emma. She asked to speak with you. Before I could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Emma stood there, her 13-year-old face a mixture of confusion and hurt. She'd grown so tall in the past year, her gymnast's posture perfect even in distress. Grandma? Her voice cracked. Dr. Morgan tactfully excused herself, leaving us alone. Hi, sweetheart, I said, opening my arms. She hesitated before accepting my hug, her body stiff. Why are you making us move? Mom says you're selling our house and making us be poor. The manipulation was so transparent it would have been comical if it weren't so destructive. Let's take a walk, I suggested, guiding her to the school's courtyard where we sat on a bench beneath a maple tree. Emma, do you know where money comes from? She looked at me strangely. From working, I guess. And banks. That's right. People work to earn money, which they use to pay for things they need and want. For 15 years, I've been paying for your family's house, cars, school, nearly everything. Emma frowned. But Dad works. He's always talking about his business meetings. Your father hasn't had a steady job in over a decade, I said gently. Those business ventures were all funded by me, and none of them succeeded. She looked skeptical. Mom says you're being mean because you're jealous of our family. Do you think that sounds like me? Have I ever been mean to you or Jacob? Emma stared at her hands. No, you're always nice. You come to all my gymnastics meets, even the faraway ones. I love you and Jacob more than anything. That will never change. But your parents are adults who need to take responsibility for themselves. She was quiet for a long moment. Is that why you don't have a nice kitchen like ours? Because you've been paying for our stuff instead of yours. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze me. Yes, that's part of it. I've postponed a lot of things to help your family. That doesn't seem fair, she said softly. It wasn't. And that's why things need to change. Emma looked up with suddenly tearful eyes. But what about my gymnastics? Mom says we can't afford it anymore. I took her hand. There are options, Emma. Scholarships for talented athletes, community programs with reduced fees. And maybe your parents will find jobs to help pay for it. Dad doesn't know how to do anything, she blurted out, then looked horrified at her own words. Your father is smart and capable, I assured her. He just needs motivation to use those abilities. Are we really going to be homeless? Her voice was small. Absolutely not. Your parents will find a place to live, perhaps not as large as your current house, but a perfectly good home. When Jacob joined us later, his 8-year-old concerns were more practical. Will I have to leave Rocket behind? He asked, referring to his beloved cat. Of course not, I reassured him. Rocket is family. Mom said we might have to live in a tiny apartment where pets aren't allowed, he said, his lower lip trembling. I made a mental note of Rachel's scare tactics. There are plenty of pet-friendly homes. You won't lose Rocket. The following weekend, my sister Patricia invited me for coffee. As we sat on her porch watching cardinals at the bird feeder, she finally addressed the situation. The community is talking, she said, pouring me a fresh cup. Half the people think you've lost your mind, and half think you should have done this years ago. And what do you think, Pat? She smiled wryly. I think I should have spoken up sooner. I watched Rachel manipulate you for 15 years and said nothing. You tried, I reminded her. Remember that Thanksgiving when you questioned why I was paying for their 3rd vacation that year? And Rachel didn't speak to me for 6 months, Patricia recalled. She's quite skilled at isolating you from anyone who might question her influence. I let it happen, I admitted. I was so afraid of losing my connection to Ryan and the grandkids that I became an ATM instead of a mother. Patricia reached over to squeeze my hand. You know they're telling everyone you've had some kind of mental break? Rachel's convinced half the neighborhood you're suffering from early dementia. I laughed without humor. Convenient explanation for why the gravy train suddenly stopped. Have they started looking for jobs yet? Not that I've heard. Ryan called yesterday suggesting I invest in another business idea as if nothing had changed. Patricia shook her head in disbelief. What about the house? Any progress there? The realtor has scheduled an open house for next weekend. They're still in denial that it's actually happening. 3 days later, I received a call from an unexpected source, Jacob's teacher, Ms. Wilson. Mrs. Jenkins, I hope you don't mind me calling. Jacob wrote something in class today that I thought you should see. She emailed me his assignment. A response to the prompt, what I learned this week. Jacob had written in his careful 3rd grade handwriting. This week I learned that grown-ups have to work to get money. My dad never had a job because Grandma gave us money. Now Dad is looking for work and Mom is very mad. Grandma says we will be okay but smaller. I think smaller might be okay if everyone stops yelling. The innocence and wisdom in those simple words brought tears to my eyes. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma standing on my porch, her backpack clutched to her chest. Grandma, can I stay with you tonight? Mom and Dad are fighting and Jacob is scared. I welcomed her inside, alarmed. Where is Jacob now? With Mrs. Kelly next door. Mom threw a plate and it scared him. I immediately called my neighbor, who confirmed she had Jacob. He's playing with our dog now, seems calmer. I'll keep him as long as needed. After ensuring Jacob was safe, I sat with Emma at my kitchen table, serving the hot chocolate she'd always loved. They fight all the time now, she confided, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Dad said he applied for jobs, but no one wants to hire him because he hasn't worked in so long. That can be challenging, I acknowledged. But there are always options. Mom says it's all your fault, Emma continued. But then I heard her yelling at Dad about money they took from your accounts. Did they steal from you, Grandma? I chose my words carefully. They made choices I didn't know about or approve of. Emma's expression grew serious beyond her years. That's wrong. In school they teach us that taking things without permission is stealing, even if it's family. You're right, it is. But adult relationships are complicated. She stirred her hot chocolate thoughtfully. I told Mom she should get a job too, and she got really mad. She said working was beneath her. The values they were teaching their children made my heart ache. There's dignity in all honest work, Emma. No job is beneath anyone if it helps support your family. That's what I think too, she said with surprising firmness. I told Mom I could quit gymnastics to save money, but she said I'm not allowed to because then people would know we're having problems. The manipulation extended even to their children, appearances mattering more than reality. The next morning, I drove Emma back home and found Ryan loading boxes into his car. "We're looking at apartments today," he said, not meeting my eyes. The realtor called about the open house. "I'm glad you're making plans," I replied. "We don't have much choice, do we?" His tone was bitter. "There are always choices, Ryan. They just might require more effort than you're accustomed to." He slammed the car trunk shut. "I had 3 job interviews this week. Entry-level positions with kids half my age as managers. Is that what you wanted? To humiliate me? I wanted you to become self-sufficient." I corrected him. "I wanted you to set an example for your children about responsibility and work ethic." "Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished." He gestured toward the house. "Rachel's inside packing. She's not exactly taking this gracefully." I nodded. "I'd like to help with the children during this transition. They're confused and frightened." His expression softened slightly. "They miss you. Jacob keeps asking when you're coming back." "I never left them, Ryan. I just stopped enabling a situation that wasn't healthy for any of us." As I walked toward the house to see my grandchildren, I pondered the question that had been haunting me. What would you teach your children about the value of money and respect? The answer was unfolding before me. Sometimes the most important lessons come through difficult changes and hard truths. 3 months later, I found myself sitting at a small cafe in Florence, Italy, sipping espresso and watching the world go by. The Duomo's magnificent dome rose in the distance, bathed in golden afternoon light. After decades of putting everyone else first, I had finally taken the Mediterranean trip I'd been postponing for years. "Signora, more coffee?" The waiter smiled as he approached my table. "Si, grazie," I replied, using one of the Italian phrases I'd been practicing. As he poured the rich, dark liquid into my cup, I checked my phone. There was a message from Emma with photos of her latest gymnastics meet, not at the elite academy anymore, but at a community center with more reasonable fees. "Got second place. Coach says I'm improving on balance beam. Miss you. When are you coming home?" I smiled and typed a quick reply. "So proud of you. Back next week. Can't wait to hear all about it." My 3 weeks in Italy had been transformative. I'd wandered ancient streets, visited breathtaking museums, and rediscovered parts of myself that had been buried under years of family obligations. Each day brought new adventures and quiet revelations. More importantly, the distance had given everyone space to adjust to our new reality. Ryan and Rachel had moved into a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. Both had found jobs, Ryan at a local marketing firm in an entry-level position, and Rachel, after much resistance, as an administrative assistant at a real estate office. My phone rang, Ryan's ringtone. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hi, Mom. How's Italy?" His voice sounded different, less entitled, more grounded. "Absolutely beautiful. I visited the Uffizi Gallery today. Dad always wanted to take you there," he said softly. I remember him talking about it. The mention of Michael without manipulation was refreshing. "Yes, he did. I thought of him the whole time." A brief silence, then, "I owe you an apology. A real one, not like the half-hearted ones I've given these past months." I took a sip of espresso, letting him continue. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Ryan went on. "This job, it's humbling. I'm working for people 10 years younger than me, starting at the bottom. But it's also, I don't know, satisfying? Last week I landed my first client, totally on my own merit. It wasn't a huge account, but it felt different from anything I've done before." "Different how?" "Earned," he said simply. "Not handed to me because of connections or your money. Just earned through hard work." The maturity in his voice brought tears to my eyes. "I'm proud of you, Ryan." "You shouldn't be." "Not yet. I've got a lot to make up for." He paused. "Rachel and I are in counseling. It was part of our agreement to stay together after everything fell apart. It's been challenging. Marriage often is, I observed. We've been talking about how he used you," he admitted. The therapist was pretty blunt about it being financial abuse. That was hard to hear. I hadn't expected this level of self-awareness so soon. And Rachel? How's she adjusting? Ryan sighed. Slower than me. She still has days when she blames you for everything. But her job is actually helping. Her boss is this strong, independent woman who built her own real estate empire. Reminds me a bit of you, actually. I think Rachel secretly admires her. And the kids. They miss the house, especially the yard. But Jacob's made friends with the building manager's son, and they play together after school. Emma's been amazing. She's babysitting for neighbors to earn money for her gymnastics expenses. She refuses to let us pay for everything, says she wants to contribute. My heart swelled with pride. She's learning valuable lessons. From you, Ryan acknowledged. She quotes grandma wisdom all the time now. Yesterday, she told Rachel that being respected is better than being liked. Definitely sounds like something you would say. After we hung up, I walked along the Arno River as the sun began to set, reflecting on how much had changed in just 3 months. The journey hadn't been smooth. There had been angry confrontations, tearful phone calls, and painful revelations about the extent of their financial deception. But beneath the chaos, something healthier was slowly emerging. 2 days before returning home, I received a video call from Jacob. Grandma, look what I made. He proudly held up a handmade card with colorful drawings. It's for your welcome home party. Emma and I are planning it. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Is that the Duomo you drew? He nodded enthusiastically. I looked it up on the computer. Dad says maybe someday we can all go to Italy together, but we have to save up money first. The concept of saving for something rather than expecting it to be provided was a significant shift. That would be wonderful, I told him. Some things are worth waiting for. Mom has a new job, he announced, changing subjects with childlike quickness. She comes home tired and her feet hurt, but she bought ice cream with her own money and it tasted extra good. Out of the mouths of babes. When I returned home, I found my house decorated with homemade welcome back signs. Emma and Jacob rushed to embrace me while Ryan and Rachel hung back, their expressions a mixture of warmth and lingering discomfort. We wanted to do something special, Ryan explained. The kids planned everything. We made dinner. Jacob announced proudly. Well, Dad cooked, but we helped. The meal was simple, spaghetti and garlic bread, a far cry from the gourmet catered affairs Rachel used to insist upon. But it was prepared with genuine effort, which made it taste better than any expensive meal we'd shared before. After dinner, while the children showed me their school projects, Rachel approached tentatively. Your trip looked amazing, she said, scrolling through the photos on my phone. The architecture is incredible. It was everything I dreamed of, I replied. She handed back my phone, hesitating. I've been unfair to you, Diane. For years, actually. The admission clearly cost her pride. I simply nodded, allowing her to continue. This job I have now, it's not what I imagined for myself. But my boss, Maureen, she talks about working her way up from receptionist to owning the company. She sees potential in me. Rachel twisted her wedding ring nervously. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually enjoying the challenge. Finding your own path can be rewarding, I offered. The thing is, she continued, lowering her voice, I don't want Emma and Jacob to be like I was, entitled, expecting everything to be handed to them. Seeing Emma save her babysitting money and budget for things she wants, she's more responsible at 13 than I was at 30. It was the most honest conversation Rachel and I had ever had. Over the following weeks, our family dynamic continued to evolve. Ryan received his first promotion at work, a small achievement that he celebrated with more genuine joy than any of his previous ventures. Rachel joined a community theater group, discovering a passion for set design that utilized her creative talents. The children adapted to their new school and made friends who knew nothing of their previous privileged lifestyle. Were there still difficult moments? Absolutely. Old habits resurfaced during times of stress. There were occasions when Ryan would casually mention needing money for something important, only to catch himself mid-sentence. Rachel sometimes made pointed comments about things the children had to give up because of our changed circumstances. But these moments became less frequent as their self-sufficiency grew. 6 months after that fateful dinner party, we gathered for Thanksgiving at their apartment. The space was modest but homey, decorated with personal touches that reflected their new reality. As we sat around the table, a second-hand find that Ryan had refinished himself, my son raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, his eyes meeting mine. To Mom, who had the courage to do what was necessary, even when it was painful. "You taught us that true love sometimes means tough love." Emma raised her glass of sparkling cider. To Grandma, who showed me that earning something feels better than just getting it. Jacob, not to be outdone, lifted his glass high. To Grandma, who went to Italy and brought me a cool magnet. Laughter rippled around the table, genuine, warm laughter that held none of the tension of our previous gatherings. Later, as Ryan walked me to my car, he paused in the cool evening air. "You know what I realized, Mom? All those years, I thought I was entitled to your support because I was your son. But being a parent myself has taught me that the greatest gift you can give your children isn't money or things, it's teaching them to stand on their own." That lesson took us both some time to learn, I acknowledged. "Better late than never," he smiled, embracing me before I drove away. As I reflect on our journey, I've come to understand that there's a profound difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Support empowers. It provides tools for growth and independence. Enabling creates dependency and resentment on both sides. My story isn't about revenge, though it might have started that way. It's about restoration. Of dignity, of healthy boundaries, of proper roles within a family. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for those we care about is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. If you believe that sometimes tough love is the greatest gift you can give someone, hit that like button. Because true love isn't about making people comfortable, it's about helping them become their best selves, even when the journey is difficult. 1 year after that life-changing dinner party, I sat in my newly renovated kitchen, the one I'd postponed for over a decade while funding my son's lifestyle. Sunlight streamed through custom windows, illuminating the quartz countertops I'd carefully selected. My sister Patricia joined me for morning coffee, admiring the transformation. "This space finally reflects you," she observed, running her hand along the walnut island. "Elegant, but practical." Just like me, I laughed, pouring her another cup. The renovation was more than just an upgraded kitchen. It was a symbol of my reclaimed independence. In the past year, I'd made several changes that reflected my new priorities. I'd scaled back my work hours at the business, hired a promising young executive to manage day-to-day operations, and started a scholarship fund for aspiring female entrepreneurs. Most importantly, I'd established clear, healthy boundaries with Ryan and Rachel. "They're coming for dinner tomorrow," I told Patricia. "Ryan's bringing the wine to celebrate his promotion." Marketing director after only a year, Patricia remarked. "He's certainly found his motivation. Working his way up has given him confidence I never saw before," I agreed. "And Rachel's real estate license comes through next month. Her boss thinks she could be a top seller within a year." My phone chimed with a text message from Emma, a photo of her report card showing straight A's, with the caption, "Hard work pays off. Can I show you my science project when we come over?" "The kids have adapted better than anyone," I said, showing Patricia the message. Emma's applying for academic scholarships for high school, and Jacob joined the community soccer league where Ryan is assistant coaching. "All because you had the courage to stop the cycle," Patricia noted. "Though I remember how worried you were that you'd lose them completely." She wasn't wrong. The first few months had been terrifying. There were weeks when Rachel refused to let me see the children, using them as pawns in her anger. There were tearful phone calls and accusations that I'd ruined their lives. There were moments I questioned everything. But as the family stabilized, as Ryan and Rachel found their footing as independent adults, the relationship transformed into something healthier than I could have imagined. "We're not perfect," I acknowledged. "There are still tense moments. Rachel occasionally makes comments about their downgrade in lifestyle. Ryan sometimes slips into expecting help rather than asking for it. But the difference is that now I can say no without fear, and they can hear no without resentment. As Patricia prepared to leave, she hugged me tightly. Michael would be so proud of you, Diane. Not just for the business success, but for finding the courage to do what was right instead of what was easy. The mention of my late husband brought tears to my eyes. I think of him every day. He always said that character is built through challenges, not comfort. After Patricia left, I sat alone in my beautiful kitchen, reflecting on the journey of the past year. At 71, I'd begun a new chapter one never expected, one filled with travel, personal growth, and rediscovered passions. I joined a photography club, started volunteering at a women's financial literacy program, and even gone on a few cautious dates with a kind widower I'd met through friends. Life hadn't ended when I closed my checkbook. It had expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined while trapped in the role of family ATM. The most profound change, though, was within my family. Ryan had discovered his own abilities when necessity forced him to try. Rachel had found purpose and self-respect through earning her own way. The grandchildren had learned invaluable lessons about work ethic, responsibility, and the true meaning of family. Our relationship now was built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. When we gathered for holidays or Sunday dinners, the conversation flowed more authentically. When they occasionally asked for help, like when Emma's school trip to Washington, D.C. exceeded their budget, it came with genuine gratitude rather than entitled expectation. And when I offered assistance, like helping with Jacob's summer camp fees, it came from choice rather than manipulation or fear. If there's one lesson I hope you take from my story, it's this: enabling someone may feel like love, but it's ultimately a form of disrespect, both to them and to yourself. Real love sets appropriate boundaries. Real love allows people to experience the consequences of their choices. Real love sees the potential in others, even when they don't see it themselves. Ask yourself, are there relationships in your life where you've confused enabling with supporting? Are you sacrificing your own well-being out of fear of losing someone's affection? Are you protecting loved ones from consequences that might actually help them grow? Sometimes the greatest act of love is stepping back and allowing people to find their own strength. It isn't easy, in fact, it's often the hardest thing you'll ever do. But on the other side of that difficult choice lies possibility. The possibility of more authentic connections, of mutual respect, of watching those you love discover their own capabilities. As for me, I'm enjoying my reclaimed life one day at a time. I'm planning another trip to Europe next spring. I'm considering writing a book about financial independence for women of my generation. I'm treasuring the genuine relationship I now have with my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren, one built on love rather than obligation or resentment. If this story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories with powerful lessons. In the comments, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with setting boundaries or making difficult choices that ultimately led to growth. Tomorrow, I'll be sharing another powerful story about a woman who discovered her husband's secret life and the unexpected followed. You won't want to miss it. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life, your dignity, and your future. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after the most difficult ones.